Okay, we are live on Facebook. And I was just talking to Carrie, so we'll just give her a second to join.
Hello, Facebook world. I'm IRWP.
Hi, everyone. I see there are 3 viewers on Facebook so far. Thanks for joining in. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. Oh, it looks like. Okay, I've posted the Google Meet link on the Facebook comments if anyone's having issues getting there. You can give that one a try. It looks like we have 8 people watching, so I'm going to go ahead and get started if that's okay with everyone. So, my name is Morgan Keeling. I am the Community Relations Manager at the Illinois River Watershed Partnership. So, typically, my job consists of doing the educational newsletters that you guys may have received in the past, building the website. I get to do events and webinars, events when the real world's kind of back in place. But ultimately, it's my job to figure out how to reach you guys, how to reach the landowners. And because you guys are ultimately the ones that are going to implement practices that affect the quality of the natural resources in our watershed and of the water quality of the Illinois River. So thankfully, we had Carrie, who in her career knew that we had resources available to help you guys. So we thank her for setting up this meeting. And if you didn't get a chance to watch today, please share this video with your neighbors. It's going to be posted on YouTube and on Facebook. I'll be sure to share the link on your Whispering Timbers page and try and get it over to our friends at Cambridge Park if they're probably fewer of those guys here because they didn't have a Facebook group that I had access to. So Carrie came to us and she told us that you guys were having some issues with flooding. She was seeing flooding in her front yard and in her, or she was seeing flooding, and that a lot of people were seeing flooding in front and backyard when we had big rain events. So today we hope to give you the tools to start addressing those issues. And one thing I want to strive is that we want to try and get your neighbors involved. So if you know of people that live in the neighborhood, please share this with them. Let them know that this is happening and let them know that these resources are available for them too. Trish, do you want to share the screen? And I'll check Facebook. I see some comments coming in.
There we go.
Okay. And just one second, I have a request from Carrie. Let's see if I can get her this link so she can join with us. Okay. If you would go to the next slide, Trish.
No problem.
Thank you. So IRWP is a 14-year-old nonprofit, non-governmental organization. So meaning we don't try and, we're not the government, we're not forcing you to do anything. We're here to try and help you learn what to do to protect our watershed. Our learning center is in Cave Springs, and typically that is open for you guys to come in and see things about the heritage and history of the the land and of our area, we have the watershed sanctuaries. So if you've been through Cave Springs, you will have seen the the area out there where people are fishing and the pavilion available. And so normally our indoor learning center is available, but now we've moved it online. So we have an online learning center available for you guys on all kinds of topics, not just LID, but anything that you could be interested in when it comes to our topics of conservation. And our territory covers northwest Arkansas and goes down into eastern Oklahoma down through Tahlequah. And Trish, if you'll hit that, there's a map of the watershed here for you guys to see. So this is our watershed, and we have Dr. Nicole Hardiman, our executive director, with us today. Nicole, will you introduce yourself and tell us your favorite fact about the watershed?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Nicole Hardiman. I'm executive director at Illinois River Watershed Partnership. As Morgan mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization whose mission is to improve the integrity of the Illinois River watershed. So this entire area here you see on the map through public education, community outreach, and implementation of conservation and restoration practices. And as you know, we have a rapidly urbanizing area, and dealing with urban stormwater is a big part of our programming. So I am so thankful that y'all are joining us to talk about stormwater in your neighborhood. It's an exciting topic for IRWP to talk about. I guess my favorite fact about the Illinois River watershed is that there's actually a 1992 Supreme Court decision specifically regarding the Illinois River watershed and phosphorus concentrations. And so phosphorus is a water quality component that we are always watching closely across both states. And Supreme Court decision, Illinois River. Thank you again, and feel free to contact us if you have any follow-up questions. Have a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Trish, if you'll go to the next slide for me, please. So RWP's mission is to improve the integrity of the Illinois River through public education, outreach, implementation of conservation and restoration practices throughout the watershed. So right now, the elements that we're touching are obviously our public education and outreach, but ultimately our goal is for you guys to implement a practice in the watershed. And Trish is going to go into that part of it in detail when she goes to her presentation. We hope that what you learned today gets you interested and excited in these topics, because they are interesting and exciting, especially in the context of Northwest Arkansas urbanizing so rapidly. The next slide, please. And today our goal is really to our overarching goal is to protect the natural resource of the watershed, like I said. And as we urbanize and the land changes, we add more impervious surfaces, so things that can't soak up the groundwater. And this is something that Trish will definitely go into in more detail. But with that changes all kinds of things. It changes how the stormwater flows, and when it hits the creeks, how the creeks and rivers, the volume and velocity of water that goes through there, which can cause different things like erosion and the flooding that you're seeing in your yard. And ultimately, IRWP is here today specifically to help you understand the problem, to help you understand what kind of practices are available for implementation. And we like to say, if you're going to reach out to the city who is going to be making plans for infrastructure, future infrastructure in your neighborhood, we want you to make an educated complaint and talk to them from an educated perspective, so that the infrastructure that they end up putting there or the changes that they make are coming from a really good place, and we can be involved in that process. So just a couple administrative things. I see that a couple of you are having problems with the Google Meet link, and I'm sorry about that. If at any point you have questions, you can put them in the chat in the Facebook group. I'll be checking that. And now we have Trish up, and she is going to tell you guys all about stormwater.
And I'll just interject here. I'm also watching the Facebook Live, so if folks have comments that they want to submit, then I can relay those as we towards the end.
Yeah, and when we're done, we have time allotted for discussion specifically. So we'll be taking some time at the end if you want to wait until then.
All right, is everybody ready? And everyone can hear me. Okay, my name is Trish Way. I'm with the Benton County Cooperative Extension Service. We have a agreement through Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning where we do stormwater education, stormwater outreach, and public participation and training for 20 different municipalities in Northwest Arkansas. Actually, I think after the annexing of Bethel Heights, I think we're down to 19. But anyway, so I do stormwater education all over Northwest Arkansas in Benton and Washington counties, along with my coworker Jane Maginot out of the Fayetteville office. And I have to give a big shout out to Jane because she is very, very passionate about LID and did most of this presentation for me. So thank you, Jane. And she'll be a resource there as well, and the watersheds in both counties. But I'm right here in my office is in Bentonville, but I live in Rogers. I drive right past the neighborhoods y'all are talking about every day. So when we talk about stormwater runoff, of course, the natural ground cover, those green spaces, those parks, when that rainfall or precipitation happens, it's very different than what it is in an urban area. We look at about 50% of what falls actually gets soaked into the ground, and only about 10% runs off. The rest of it goes back up in the atmosphere, 40% through evapotranspiration. And again, this is just a picture of kind of what Northwest Arkansas looked like. And then this started to happen. We learned some things from this. And you'll see less and less of in new development of everything just being scraped down to bare dirt before the building really starts. And here we have the many different forms of impervious surfaces in an urban landscape. Impervious meaning it's, concrete. The water doesn't soak in. It's a hard surface that the water has to run off of. And this doesn't really look that bad. You see lots of green space, but when you start to color things in, you have roads, parking, buildings, driveways, sidewalks. You quickly see that a large portion of the picture is suddenly colored in. So that water has to run somewhere. And we still think of ourselves as this, we have such beautiful natural resources here in Northwest Arkansas. We have lots of green, we have trees, where this used to be like, oh, this had have to be a picture of a big city that I'm showing you right now. This is a picture of Springdale. You'll see the markers there. We have Cross Church and the Springdale Airport. So imagine trying to color all of that in, of where the impervious surfaces are. It's a lot of storm water that we're dealing with now, and our population just continues to grow. There's another picture. This is Fayetteville. And it is nothing against Rogers, that I don't have a picture of them. It is strictly just that this is the side of the plane they were sitting on as they flew in that they were able to take these photos. So. And now let's see, when we've changed the environment from that natural cover to that more impervious surfaces, when you get about a 75% to 100% impervious surface in an area, basically the whole thing flip-flops. You end up only getting about a 15% of infiltration. Only 5% of that is deep infiltration down into the soil. 55% of that water is now flowing as runoff. And 30% is going back up into the atmosphere as transpiration. So 55% is a whole lot of water to deal with. Now, we're not there yet. We're not 75 to 100% impervious surface. But as we continue to become more urban and there's more development, this is one of the main reasons we really want to discuss low impact development to help increase the amount of pervious surfaces, those surfaces that do allow the water and runoff to soak in. And remember, in town, runoff flows untreated. In all of the towns in Northwest Arkansas, they flow untreated directly to nearby streams and lakes. So as you are aware, you're in the Illinois River watershed. All the water that's flowing down the side of your street into those curb and gutters are flowing to the local stream. It does not see a wastewater treatment plant. This is a good picture here showing you actually where that storm drain on that street actually flows into the larger creek. And you can see the trash and things stuck in the grate there. And this is part of our MS4 system, so a municipal separate storm sewer system. When a city reaches a certain point of urbanized area or a certain population, they have to begin looking at that MS4 system, that separate storm sewer system. And there's lots of regulations, there's management plans that are reported back to the not department anymore, sorry, Division of Environmental Quality for Arkansas on how they plan to manage all of that stormwater runoff. So, stormwater can be bad if it's full of sediment, so this may be construction runoff, erosion, bare soils. If it has excess nutrients in it, and the fertilizers, if you fertilize your yard or garden, things like that, we are in a nutrient surplus area in Northwest Arkansas, meaning our soils are already pretty rich in nutrients. Please bring your soil for testing over to the Cooperative Extension Office, and we will test that for you and let you know if you even need to be adding fertilizers. We may be able to save you some money, as well as keep those nutrients from flowing into our waterways. Of course, we have pet waste, nutrients there, as well as bacteria, and the erosion issue of that soil being in our stormwater. The soil will release those nutrients when it's mixed in with the water. Then, of course, we have litter, whether it's intentional or unintentional. It's what people think as a huge problem. Actually, the sediment and nutrients are a larger issue, but it's because the litter we can see so much more. Let's mention the bacteria. Quick fact about pet waste. Dog waste versus human waste has twice as much harmful bacteria in it. So Pet waste can be an issue if it's not being picked up. And then pesticides, lawn chemicals, and HHW. That's household hazardous waste. So those will be other chemicals that you have around the house. They can also get into the stormwater if they're not stored properly. And then, of course, automotive fluids. So this is the oil, antifreeze, things that leak out. That all, as that water flows over driveways and roads, can end up in our stormwater as well. And here's also what we see as some bad situations. These are some pretty severe cut banks. So when we have this increased impervious area and this water, the storm drainage system is also meant to prevent flooding. So to get it away from your homes as fast as possible. Well, the water, when you do that, it hits these creeks so quickly and at such a high velocity that it'll break down the side of the stream. So we get those cut banks that really shouldn't be happening. It's because the water flows through there at such a high velocity that it's just moving the soil away with it and causing a significant amount of erosion. When I do presentations to school kids, they look at these pictures and they're like, well, it's always been like that in my life. Well, it's not supposed to be. We're trying to plan better and do better so that we can prevent some of this from happening. There's after a recent rainfall where you see the streams are running brown. It really shouldn't be that color. And I say brown, they're probably more orange with all the clay we have in our soils. But we can do some things that will help reduce some of that sediment from entering into our water. So what now? We're going to talk about some low impact development options for you and maybe see if that can help out with some of the situations. So what is LID? Low impact development is a way to slow it down, spread it out, and let it soak in. So instead of looking at water as a bad thing, stormwater runoff as a bad thing, let's start looking at it as a resource, that we can really use that water and make use of it. It's not just, the goal is not just to keep it flowing away as fast as possible. And we want to return that to our soils and try to get some of that deep infiltration. So we recommend an umbrella survey. Where is the water coming from? Where is it going? How fast is it moving? How much water is there? And to create a site map. So yes, I'm really asking all of you to better understand your own property. You're going to have to walk outside in a rainfall. No lightning. Never recommended you walk out in lightning. Don't get me wrong there. But walk outside and look at how the water is really flowing across your property. Where all is it coming from? Is it coming from your yard, from your downspouts? Is it coming off the driveway? Is the water overflowing the side of the street gutter? Is it flowing from a neighbor's yard under your fence into your yard? Or is yours flowing into their yard? So do that umbrella survey and let's look at creating a site map. It does not have to be this perfect, but it will definitely help you understand the water as it flows around your home. Again, creating the site map, you're looking at where's the water coming from? Where is it going? Think about how fast it's moving and how much water there really is. So is it more than what's just falling, what you think on your lot? And of course, you're going to have to do some math. How much runoff is generated by your home? First, you'll need to determine the footprint of your roof. Now, this is not the square footage of your home, because you may have 2 stories, but the footprint of the roof area. So length times width, 25 feet times 40, you have 1,000 square feet. And that's actually pretty small of an area for the neighborhoods that we're talking about. Most of them are probably, I'm going to guess, square footage is for the roof area is going to be a little bit larger. So the estimated amount of water generated from 1 inch of rain, multiply the roof area by 6.23. So if we're looking at 975 square feet, we're looking at about 607 gallons running off your house. Again, that's probably smaller than most of yours. Homes, 1,250 square feet. You're looking at 780 gallons of water just running off the roof. It's not taking into account your driveway or any sidewalks you may have around your house. If you have a 3,000 square foot roof area, you're looking at over 1,800 gallons of water that's going to be generated from a 1 inch rainfall. And sometimes you have gutters and sometimes you don't. So that'll make a difference as to where that water is coming down and where it's flowing. So we get about 45 inches of annual rainfall here. A 1,200 square foot home will generate over 28,000 gallons of runoff every year. And that's an average year. And we've had, last year was definitely an above average year for sure. Like I think we hit our normal annual rainfall by August. So it was a crazy wet year in 2019. And again, that's a 1,200 square foot roof area. So we're going to look at this as redirecting your downspouts. So if you have downspouts, and when I drove through the neighborhood, most of the homes I noticed did. We'll go back to our 1,200 square foot home example. I've got these numbers written down here at the side. If we have 4 downspouts, you can assume that each one drains about 300 square feet of roof area. One downspout will deliver 186 gallons during that 1 inch rainfall. So that's a lot of water just coming down each downspout. Now we recommend, and a lot of them in the neighborhood were, that you put this onto an impervious area. Put it into the yard, put it into a flower bed so that water really can be soaked in. And just redirect those off of those pervious areas. If it does flow directly onto the driveway or the sidewalk, put it onto an area where that water can soak into the ground. Got a couple different little meters here for you that are part of our low impact development meters. So just we're looking at price on the first one. You'll see the little 1 to 3, and then do it yourself with everyone working, or a lot of people working from home and having some extra time to deal with some yard projects. We put in our little DIY meter there from amateur to pro. And we just added this water volume. So what does the 1 drop to 5 drops really represent? So the 5 being the highest, we really don't think any of these low impact development things that we're going to talk about tonight are going to give you that 5 rating of how much water it's going to really help with the quantity of water. But we have put in a little bit of a meter here for you. So redirecting our downspouts, we're thinking about a 1 to 2 raindrop. Very inexpensive, and you can totally just do this yourself. Rain chains, these are kind of the same thing as kind of redirecting that downspout, letting the water go onto an area where it will actually the rain chains are more to help reduce that splashdown of the water and taking the soil out from underneath it. They're going to be very inexpensive again, very, very easy to do yourself. Only about a 1 on a raindrop scale, but they can be very pretty and useful if you have certain areas around your home where this will be beneficial. Diversion berms and swales. So very inexpensive. You can do this yourself, but this is giving that kind of back and forth, or you're building little elevated areas with the soil. So here's where you can kind of see the bottom left-hand picture, the flow off of like a parking lot. It's flowing there, and then it's going to hit those berms or that soil, slow down. We've got them vegetated so they'll stay in place, but the water will be able to, if it's high volume, the water will be able to run around the edges of those berms, but it will slow it down significantly and help it soak in. Our water volume here increases a lot. You're going to get 2 to 3 on the water soaking in back into the soil and the amount of volume that it can deal with. And our volume scale, by the way, is really an estimate. There's not a whole lot of research on these out there. It was done a little bit based off of some EPA stormwater volume research, but for the homeowner and low impact development is still new. These are estimates at the best, but I did want to make these available to you. Rain barrels, very inexpensive. Again, very, very easy to do yourself. And do notice that it'll let you save the water and use it for those dry times that we have. And you'll notice on the bottom pictures, there's a hose. Now this hose coming out of the top on the green barrel on the bottom That's not the hose for like watering things later. That's a overflow hose. Again, we said that one downspout on a 1,200 square foot home is about 186 gallons of water. Those barrels are only usually about 45 or 50 gallons of water that it'll hold. So that overflow hose flowing out the side will really let you take that overflow water and put it to an area. You know how long your hoses are, 50 feet, 75, 100 feet away. So it'll help keep that water away from the base of your home as well. That's what I really like, the overflow hose. You can put a soaker hose on there as well, run it into the landscape, but it'll help move some of that water away from the base of your home out into the yard. It's not going to deal with a lot of the volume, but it will help get some of it away from your foundation. If we get a downpour, I'm sorry, your rain barrel is still going to overflow. It won't flow out that hose quite fast enough. But there's still a lot of water that can be redirected, and it's so good to be able to save that water for later and use during those dry times. Cisterns. Notice we go up in our DIY and expense here pretty significantly. I do know a couple homeowners that did some cisterns themselves, even burying them in the ground. They did have to rent some equipment for that, and you'll basically, it's more of like a giant rain barrel. You're going to save that water for later, or even some of the underground cisterns will actually let that water just sit and then soak back into the soil more. These will probably, if you're going to try to reuse any of the water for anything other than outside watering, there will be some health department regulations. This is almost easier to put in on new construction if you're going to do anything like this for really with the house. That all has to be approved. But if you're doing it just like in the yard for water storage, it's possible. It really kind of depends on the soil of your yard of whether you want to try to tackle digging that out or not. But put kind of mid-range on the do-it-yourselfer scale there. And our water volume is going to help with is it really on a 1 to 2 scale there as well. Rain gardens are the same thing. Mid-range on the price and the do-it-yourself, and you'll be able to do a lot with the volume though. So this is probably one of the higher, 3 to 4 here, that you could actually do yourself. So it's redirecting that water into an area where it's going to be able to pool and soak into the ground. So this is not going to be something that sits long enough where there would be mosquito issues or anything like that. The water should soak into the ground within about 48 hours, and it takes longer than that for mosquitoes to set up. So that's not an issue with rain gardens. They do have to be in the correct place. So if you're thinking, wow, I have this area in my yard where it's already really kind of soggy and damp, this is probably not going to be the best spot for a rain garden because the soils are going to be, it's already demonstrating that the soils are not allowing that water to infiltrate. Because of the heavy soils here in Northwest Arkansas, there is usually a good bit of soil remediation that has to take place for a rain garden, and that you have to add in compost and things like that, maybe some sand, so that the water does pull and still infiltrate. But we can also do some soil tests there with you if this is something you're interested in, to see where there might be a good spot for a rain garden. And of course, we have to know any of lines or things like that, because you are going to have to go down about 18 inches. And I have hand dug a rain garden. And I promise you, I have vowed to never ever hand dig a rain garden again. So, again, that kind of depends on how rocky the soil is around your homes, of whether you want to try that yourself. But we're mid range on the price and the DIY value again. Those dry wells and catch basins. This is what I was talking about more about with the French drain. These work well. The little, you can see in the top picture, it like pops up and overflow goes into there, lets that water soak into the ground. I like the dry well, catch basins. They'll store that water, and it's really for infiltration. It's not for you to use for anything else later. It's just really helping that reduce the volume of water that's flowing across the land. It's going to just get it straight underneath the ground into the soil and let it soak in where possible. Mid-range, 3 to 4 as well. Again, I caution you on that do-it-yourself as to whether or not your soil is able to be dug into that deep. So you may need some equipment rental or let somebody else take care of that for you. Dry creek beds. Seen some of these look just absolutely gorgeous around Northwest Arkansas. More and more people are putting those in, so it lets that water kind of flow and meander back and forth and still soak in. And as it runs over the rocks, that really helps reduce the volume. Or I'm sorry, not the volume, the velocity, the speed at which the water is moving. So it's slowing that down, so when it does reach its final destination, it hopefully shouldn't just blow out the soil. It should have been slowed down enough that in everything starting to soak in better, that would not be an issue. There's lots of different design things here as well that you can look up online. So mid-range in our price and do it yourself, and depending on length, probably more than anything, or your volume of water it's going to deal with is going to be anywhere from thinking probably 2 to 4. Green roofs. They are more expensive, of course. You are not going to want to do this yourself, but it is an option. There's multiple different layers here that have to be done for the green roofs, but it really does deal with a good bit of that water, depending on the amount of the green roof. The picture on the bottom right-hand side is actually from a row of townhouses that is in Fayetteville now, and so that's like the little front porch area they've put in as a green roof, and it's dealing with just the water that's being directed to that or that's falling onto that. So not a huge impact, but it is dealing with some of that water in that area. It's not over the whole home. There's weight issues because of the soil and things as well. That's why we highly recommend you have a pro do this, but it will help probably 1 to 2 on the volume of water. And these are usually this is just the water that's falling on them, not really redirecting off the top of your house into a section of green roof. Porous pavers. So whether it's a driveway, a walkway around the house, and these don't have to be, it's not the same necessarily as porous concrete where the water just flows directly through it. Porous pavers will allow water to soak in between the cracks. And there is still usually a sub-basin area and a pipe where the under drain will flow, the water that's collected underneath those pavers will flow to a larger area. Sometimes there's enough landscaping around there where this is not necessary, but this is why we put it at a pro scale, and it is more expensive. But we're seeing more and more of the porous pavers being used around Northwest Arkansas. My office in Bentonville, over at the Public Service Building for the county, the path and garden that goes around the flagpole out in front of the building is all porous pavers. And there is not a under drain in that system because it's going through the middle of a garden, so there's plenty of landscape around there. But we did have to dig down about 24 inches, I think, for the different layers there. If any of you have been out to Lake Atalanta, over in front of the Clark Pavilion, so the big pavilion on the south side, right as you're getting into the park off Walnut, that parking lot is actually porous pavers. There is a section in the middle that is concrete, and we put that section in the middle just because of the way people were turning around, as well as there is a dumpster over there, so the trash trucks needed something where they could turn and move large things. Wouldn't have to be any issues with the pavers popping up or anything like that. It has not been an issue. The parking lot is drained very, very well, even through the flooding that we had a couple years ago where it harmed a good bit of the Lake Atalanta Park. The pervious paver parking lot did very, very well. Didn't sustain really any damage. Some of the landscaping around it did, but not the pavers themselves. So that's the one over, again, right in front of Clark Pavilion on the south side, the big pavilion right there as you're coming in on from downtown into Lake Atalanta. Terrace landscapes. This is going to be depending on the size of your area. So if you have a lot of slope that you have to deal with, I'm not going to go over this a whole lot because as I drove through, there wasn't a whole lot of slope issues that I noticed. But this, if you do have one of the lots that does have a lot of slope, terracing it so that it doesn't just end up making gullies and just shooting down the side of the slope, the terracing will help give those breaks, kind of like the berms we were talking about earlier. It'll just give that break, let the water soak in and let it kind of overflow over the sides into another area and slow it down and let it soak in. Fairly expensive. Our DIY is mid-range. Again, this is going to depend on your ability to carry rock as well as how rocky your soil is, whether you can even dig this out or not. So, and we're going to give it a 2 to 3 on dealing with the volume. So really the big thing with the LID is what is right for you? What are the costs on your investment? Do you feel like you're going to get that back? Will it solve the problem? Most likely will not totally solve your problem, but it will probably help with some of the issues that you're having. And it may take a couple different LID options to get a more comprehensive program. Again, that's why that site map of your home is going to be very, very important. what are your water needs? Do you need to save it for later? Do you like that false kind of river area, dry creek beds running through? Is that appealing to you? Maintenance. Long-term maintenance is definitely something to think about when you're doing low impact development. Are you going to stay in the home? Is this something that someone behind you is going to know how to address and make sure that it's still functioning properly? And of course, always have to consider just the sheer volume that's coming off your home and your driveway and other impervious surfaces around, like sidewalks. So I hope this is giving you some options of what to think about, what you can ask some more questions about. What would your return on investment possibly be? And the last thing I want to provide you with is the City of Rogers website. There's a comments and complaints section on the website where you can fill out information and they will let you know how they're handling that complaint. And you'll make sure that the complaint is getting to the right person, because through this website, they're going to make sure that it gets to the right person. So if you have some drainage issues that are coming from, let's say, and maybe a clogged storm drain, or the volume flowing down the street is so much that it's overflowing out of the street up into your yard, those are good things to document. Take pictures if you can, and you can fill out those complaint forms online and get that information submitted to the City of Rogers. And as always, you can call over to IRWP. They'll gladly help you out with some issues. You can call me at my office, send me an email, and together we'll answer questions for you or try to get you to the right person that can answer your questions. Thanks. I'm going to turn it back over to Morgan.
Thank you so much, Trish. There was a lot in there that I didn't even know, and we definitely at IRWP, one thing that I was thinking is we'll get those calculator resources up on our online learning center as well, because I know that doing that math is going to be really important for your decision if and when you decide to make an LID addition to your yard. I'd like to thank you guys that were able to get on the Google Meet. Donald, Mike, Carrie, thank you guys for joining us today. I saw someone under the alias of Pop something, and I think JD as well. So thank you guys for joining on the Google Meet. Right now, I'd just like to open it up for questions. Is there anyone here in the chat that would like to ask a question to Trish or I or Nicole?
I would, if you don't mind. This is Don. I was just curious, why such a push for LID within the area, and what is the creek that all of our stormwater flows into?
That's a great question. Nicole, do you want to take the creek question? Do you know?
Sure, yeah. So that area, we had looked at the elevation of the change in elevation of the neighborhood, as you probably know, from east to west is decreasing in elevation, and everything's collecting down there kind of around, Crafton Toll area, and the Cooper Communities building. That is ultimately part of the Osage Creek subwatershed. And there's this, down around the highway and the auto dealership across the highway, there are a series of detention ponds through there, very, very large detention ponds. But, something is happening in your neighborhood And I think that's something I'd like Carrie to discuss, the the upper elevation part of the neighborhood is really where you would like to target for these low impact development practices, so that you're ultimately reducing the flow up on the eastern side of the neighborhood before it gets down to the western side. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. Now, and the only thing I can think of right now is there's a current push for an apartment complex build, and I'm just wondering how that's going to impact the Osage Creek as well. And it's mildly concerning to me for just the entire Illinois watershed.
Yeah, so I mean, so urbanization in the Illinois River watershed is definitely of concern. And and Trish can probably speak to this more than I can. All of those large developments are under a stormwater permit and covered by the drainage manual of the city of Rogers. And it's really up to the cities to make sure that stormwater infrastructure is operating at its peak capacity, its the best ability. But yeah, and it would be great, if residents in the city of Rogers would advocate more for incentivizing low impact development, making sure that detention ponds are doing their jobs. Detention ponds are really effective at reducing quantity and addressing pollution, but we have to make sure that they're working correctly. Trish, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I just always remember that with the increased urban development, a lot of times that's going next to areas of town that are older, and it may not be like, wow, the city is old parts of town, but really the stormwater regulations really started coming into play about 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So those, when you get a new development right next to an older development where those regulations were not necessarily part of the plan, there can be some issues unanticipated. Like, everybody's doing their absolute best to deal with the water. Again, so much about stormwater is about flood control and just trying to get it away as fast as possible. But that low impact development really brings it back to, let's try to soak it in and let's use this resource. Because so much with the stream banks kind of blowing out and breaking down is because we're just trying to get it away and make it somebody else's problem.
So
we don't want to do that. Let's try to keep it on site and deal with it. Does that kind of make sense?
And one thing to note.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and one thing to note that I think also addresses your question that we should mention is that the city of Rogers does not have a stormwater utility fee. Most of Arkansas doesn't. Only a couple cities do, but that is something that's very common in other states to allow for funding to not just do LID projects, but to also, help with the infrastructure. So basically that would answer why we're trying to push these sort of LID practices. It's on the landowners to have, to want the buy-in for this sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm kind of afraid of, that the landowners are just trying to cash in and not really buy in on essentially the greater good of maintaining a watershed, right? Because that's the whole point of the RIPW. Like, you guys have done amazing work. I love walking the whole side, but the big thing that scares me is the negative impact of water quality due to just cutting, putting it in the hands of people who may want to just be making a profit.
Well, I will say there was a lot of lessons learned from the large housing boom. Right as I was getting started with the extension, and that's been 13 years ago. So we was really kind of seeing the downfall, and that's where we saw several just subdivisions that went bankrupt. And the first thing they did was they went in and they just scraped everything. So we scraped all that topsoil off. We scraped all the grasses and trees off, and we've learned because we're in a housing boom again and a building boom, but we're not seeing that because we are planning for better ways to help deal with that water and stormwater on site, and have realized that there's better ways to approach these issues.
And I see a question in the chat from Mike that I want to bring up, and it's about, why the drainage tunnels haven't been cleaned. Mike, really today, we're trying to help organize people to put these complaints into the city and have them cleaned. And I think Trish even reached out to them to let them know that we were doing this. So part of the purpose of having this meeting is to kind of get you guys the same messaging, kind of get you guys all on the same page so that we can all kind of let them know that this needs to happen.
I've got a question. This is Carrie. I actually have probably a couple of questions. When you all did a site visit, I know you drove around, looked at the places where water flows between Cambridge Park and Whispering Timbers, and probably you noticed that we have this huge retention pond over on 37th Street, and there's never anything in it. And so, meanwhile, there's plenty of rain coming down, and there's water going down Wren and Dove, and so I'm trying to. I guess I wonder if there's anything that they can do to make that utilized better. I mean, some homeowners are like me, where I'm just the low spot on the block, and I'm going to have to look into, a catch basin, and I know some people have used French drains. So there are some things that somebody like me on an individual basis is going to have to do, and perhaps those of us who are in that same boat. I know, like JD Davis, he posted pictures. Morgan, if you got a chance to go through our Facebook page, he's got stuff up against his house. I mean, and it wasn't even as bad as it has been this year. So we're going to have to look at some kind of intervention on a homeowner basis, and maybe we can get the same contractor and maybe be able to cut some costs by doing several houses at once. But we need help coming up with a plan that addresses that drainage over there on Wren, where they're kind of getting some flash flooding. What can you do? I know water runoff is your jam, and it's not really that of the city, and they are usually so overwhelmed because we are a quickly growing area. Can you help us with some solutions to present to them that they could fit into their plans for help? Because we're going to have to do something fairly soon before we start having homeowners with water in their house.
Absolutely. I will say that I talked to one of the city employees, talked to Chris Paxton. I don't think you'll mind me using his name. And he said with the 5 days of rain we got, was that last week? It's been a crazy year. Everything starts to blend together. He said they actually didn't get one drainage complaint. So if there were issues, they're not getting turned into the right people.
There we go. Well, we are mobilized now to be able to complain. I guess I just didn't know we needed to complain. I mean, because I have sent information to them specifically to Chris, and I just, I mean, I was following up once a month for a while, and I just finally gave up and went, okay, let's go talk to some other people. And that's when our conversation started. So we need to be turning in those complaints on a regular basis.
Oh, and use the complaint site so that it gets to the right person. And that was just for that week. Chris had said he was surprised that he didn't get any drainage complaints that week, but it was, water was coming down much slower. I mean, we got a lot of water, but over 5 days, and it was actually a gentle rain, which we don't always get in Northwest Arkansas. I feel like we get a gully washer or a mist, and this was actually a nice gentle rain for a few days. So,
Jerry, I have a question.
Okay, so that.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I do have a question for you, and I sort of feel like last week's rain wasn't quite representative because it had been so dry, and
Yes.
the first few days of rain just infiltrated down. But since 2017, to Trish's point, we've had quite a few gully washers. And so do you know like how often there will be kind of that pooling of water? Or do you have like an approximate sense of the last time it happens? Like, was it April of 2017 when we had that huge rainfall? And the reason I ask, if we can get a sense of, the time, how often it's happening, then we can go back and look at what was the rainfall in that time period and how much approximate flow we're getting in that time period from the neighborhood.
Are you talking about like on an individual lot basis, or like over there on the west side where they've got some more flooding type issues?
Yeah, on the west side, when the whole system is kind of coming down.
I don't know. Do we have anybody from Wren or Dove on the call that's able to comment in? They would have more firsthand knowledge of when that happens. I know we were talking about it a lot in the Facebook group in the spring notably we get more rain and we do get saturated and we get rainfall over a period of days. So I feel like they could probably provide us a little bit more information. As far as just the last few days as an individual homeowner, I had water up over most of my backyard for about, right at first, at the worst of it, for 12 hours, and then it takes a couple of days to soak in. So there are situations like that where I'm getting runoff from my neighbors, and part of it is, one neighbor will improve their property and then take less of that runoff space, and and that's what I've seen in the past. And then my neighbors are doing an addition, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, look how that happens. There's, yay for people adding pools and things like that. I did speak to a neighbor yesterday on Mallard that says he has an issue where it just runs, because part of Mallard is a little bit higher, and it just runs off the higher lots across his lot. He's got a river, and it probably runs right down across JD's property as well. And so we've got that situation where it's flowing through the lots down, down to the west side.
Mm-hmm.
I will say when I drove through, I was very, very impressed at the amount of people that had their downspouts that were actually already turned to where they're flowing onto the yard. and not just, immediately into the driveway or sidewalk. And a very observant neighborhood as well, as I realized after I was circling around on the 3rd Street that someone then followed me through the entire neighborhood. So kudos to all of y'all for that, because they were like, what is this person doing over there? They just keep driving up and down the streets. So I thought that impressed me also. Y'all are looking out for each other over there. But yeah, I was very impressed by the downspouts that were turned into the yard, and that the soil is trying to soak that in.
Nicole and Trish.
Yeah, and that's a technique that I'm going to try, is moving my downspouts to a different part of the yard and see if that helps. But man, I just hate to move that onto my neighbor's property,
No, absolutely. Seriously, the rain barrel may need with this area almost 2 overflow hoses. That'll really let you take that overflow water out of a rain barrel. You can catch it at the end of the downspout and then take that overflow water a significant amount away from the base of the house to a totally different area. Doesn't have to be the yard or into the neighbor's yard, but just take it to the back portion of the yard or to a drier, more elevated section and let the water kind of flow there.
Now, one of the things that you didn't ask, I'm sorry, I talked over somebody, but one of the things that you didn't mention was French drains. Did you use, is one of these where you, options that you gave us for LID, is that equivalent to a French drain, or is there a reason you didn't talk about French drains?
Yeah, that's kind of that, what was it, the one we were, one in the photo was really the French drain going to almost like the barrel buried underneath the ground, and then it would be the pop-up. Some of them don't have that big of a basin on the end to catch the water. Some of them are just, just flowing it out into the yard, and then they're, just flowing a basic pipe, and then the pop-up drain. But some of them really do have that big barrel underneath that lets the water catch there as well. So it's almost like a rain barrel, a large rain barrel buried underneath there. So the water's being stored out in the yard there. But yeah, French drains can be helpful as well.
So I actually
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just have a quick question about the French drains, because I put in 4 pipes, if you will, the 4-inch pipes that are 10 feet out, just to get water away from pooling at the house and the base of the house. But it goes into a flat part of the yard, and it doesn't actually flow down into the street, which that wasn't the intent. But I'm wondering if it pools within the French drain and it'll maintain and stay there, and I guess, if you will, allow the groundwater or ground around it to absorb it enough.
That is very politely above my pay grade, because your soil types and the vegetation that you have planted there is going to make a huge difference on the water absorption and infiltration. So feel free, again, soil testing in the state of Arkansas is already paid for. Hi, sweetie, I'm on a meeting. It's already paid for in Arkansas as part of a fertilizer tax, so that's free to any resident. We need 2 cups of soil and bring that over to the extension office, and we'll tell you your soil makeup as well as what nutrients you need or don't need.
Okay.
And it does have to be dry though, so
So wait.
yeah, put it on some newspaper, 2 cups, bring it in, put it on some newspaper, and after about a day or 2, the newspaper will soak all that up. You can bring Will in after that.
Vegetation choices that might help with some of the areas that, like when we have an area of our yard that drains slowly.
If you have a more wet area, we have our native plant list for rain gardens, and the use of native plants, and Nicole and Morgan can definitely speak to this. Our native plants are really meant to deal with the extreme weather that we get here in Northwest Arkansas, so they can love the rain when we've got a ton of it, and then they can make it through those dry weeks when we don't.
Yeah, the roots go deeper into the ground, so it allows for more water to soak up. I have one comment on the Facebook that I just want to point out and say hi to Amy. Thank you for watching. She said she lives on Mockingbird, and they always have water running into the road for several days after the rain stops. It seems to flow and collect 42nd and Mockingbird. It just sits on the road with nowhere to go. Would the city consider putting in storm drains? So I guess, Amy, what we would probably recommend is you use that complaint form to let them know, take pictures, document when that happens, and when it happens, go to that complaint form with all of your data collection, and just let them know that they need something there. Wouldn't you say so, Trish? Do you have any further recommendation for that?
I think that's probably the best way to handle that. Yeah.
That's probably.
This is Nicole. I mean, I would also suggest, the whole reason we're pushing for low impact development is we're trying to encourage infiltration before it even gets to the street.
Absolutely.
And so, the collection in the street is just the symptom of the problem. What's going on at the houses is going to truly address the problem. So that's my soapbox for the night.
Thank you.
So the lesson here is for us to be squeaky wheels, and I think after dealing with a couple of issues with rezoning, I think we're probably mobilized to be able to do that. My concern is we'd really like them to know where there might be an improvement that they need to make that would fix that problem over there on the west side, where they have the pooling and that is the old part of the neighborhood. You get over there with Raven and Dove, and that was developed in the 80s, whereas you come over to like Quail and Mallard, that was developed more in around late 90s, early 2000. And some of the houses were not built on until, maybe later than that. So when you've looked at that, did you see anything that would be something that the city could say, yes, that's a project that we should do and we need to get it on our plan?
So this is Nicole again. I'll just say, for me, some follow-ups from this are, does the city have a GIS map of their stormwater infrastructure in that area? And I would be happy. Yeah, okay. It's not on their website right now, but I would be happy to request that from the city of Rogers. And, you can basically sort of start to do a delineation to see where the stormwater is collecting and where it's going. And then those would help to identify which houses we could kind of target from a low impact development perspective. And the second, I know Trish, we had talked about, I think to Mike's point, looking at cleaning, making sure the infrastructure wasn't clogged up anywhere. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so that I think maybe a next step would be to invite the city in with a joint meeting so that we can really they can really get the hand of where everything is, because there is so much infrastructure underneath the ground and around that area that we need to make sure that infrastructure is functioning the way that it's supposed to, that there's not a clog, that a dry drainage ditch hasn't been built up so that things aren't flowing through it anymore. I mean, is the water getting to the ponds the way they're supposed to? Did that neighborhood actually have ponds that water is flowing to? I mean, depending on when it was built, there may not have been one where that was meant to be flowing in there. And that is not information I had time to look up. But I think the next step would be to sit down with them and let them know and let them look some of that up themselves, because they're going to have to go back through plans from years ago that are not always the easiest to get a hold of to see if that infrastructure is still there and functioning the way it's supposed to.
I think that answered my question about the detention ponds and what to do to see why those aren't filling up and what are the next steps on that part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is like you've got this huge detention pond over there on 37th, and we've got water flowing just west of that detention pond down through yards on the west, going downhill. And I just don't know if there's something we can do to pull that. I mean, that's part of the issue for people that are on quail that are impacted. But even we've got some other houses that look like they would be up high enough, and for some reason they're getting, they've got drainage issues. So anyway, but so it sounds like if we could get Chris Paxton, who is pretty new to the city, or who are some of the others? Is it Nathan? I'm trying to think of some of the names over there. But maybe get them on a call and talk with them a little bit, kind of see what they have in terms of intervention.
Yeah, I think my next step will be to look at that GI request and look at that GIS layer. And yeah, I think it's definitely at some point worth bringing the city into the discussion. But, we will rely on kind of the neighborhood to be our advocates to the city to get it done. It's much more effective
now we know
contact them than if we contact them.
Well, and that was the thing. We didn't know what to ask for, I think, and we didn't know what was possible. I mean, because we don't know what the cause is for what's happening over there on the west side when it does flash flood. And I have a feeling it isn't really about the neighbors' individual lots. I have a feeling it's something else. And so it's drainage from something that's happening in the undeveloped property around us. They made some changes to some utility work back there kind of north of the neighborhood. And I wonder if that's it. I think we always wonder if the Cooper Communities buildings or the Barrington Center buildings, maybe there's something going wrong over there with their drainage that might be causing overflow into that west side of Whispering Timbers.
And it frankly might be a little bit of both, right? Maybe stormwater infrastructure not doing its job, as well as, I mean, as you said, improvements within each lot. Right. But we want to work with the neighborhood to try to come to a solution if we can.
Yeah, definitely. I worry about us. Some of us starting to have a insurance risk. I don't know exactly what to call that, where we would get get rain in our houses and have to file insurance claims, and it causes our insurance to go up because we are suddenly having claims like that. So that's the kind of slippery slope if we don't address this now, because it is getting worse. And so we want to make sure that we can head this off and help our homeowners do the individual things that they need to do. But yeah, also to kind of, figure out how we go to the city and what we go to the city with. But I think that's the message I hear with you loud and clear. Guys, if we see something, say something. So
2020
squeaky
message.
wheel gets the grease. And I mean, now that we know that, that will help us. And I think it will help us get priority if we're able to, when it's happening, get out there and take pictures, put on your rain boots and go walk over there. I live on Mallard, so I tend to, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but definitely if you're out there, take pictures. Kind of see where the rain is coming from and see if you can get some information. That kind of intelligence really helps in the investigative process.
Yes, and a well-informed complaint is not the squeaky wheel, it's getting the city the information that they need. So just a complaint of, I got standing water in my yard, really doesn't tell anybody anything. I've got water that's been standing in my yard for the last 36 hours. I hear the pictures that look like it was flowing from east to west, or, that sort of thing is what it'll really help with the solution development.
Yeah, and it's possible that I can't imagine that there's anything grant wise that would help us as regular homeowners. And I think most of our homeowners could manage their own issues. We're just trying to find the least, the most inexpensive way to manage it. It's a great neighborhood, and it's a lot of reason to invest in our houses over here. And of course, home prices are rallying in this price range over here, so we're super excited about that. But anyway, I do that. That's the thing. If we could, I will reach out to Chris Paxton and see if I can maybe talk to him about getting on a call with you all, if you think we could do it sooner rather than wait till the next rain. I don't know. What do you think as far as timing on that?
If you can get with him and get a time slot, then I can cross check mine and Nicole's schedules for you if needed.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any more questions?
Carrie, just thank you so much for contacting us. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys.
And I can't stress enough, just talk to your neighbors. If you see them, bring it up. Hey, how's the flooding in your yard? Did you know that this meeting happened? Did you know that this is what you need to do? It's really going to take a lot of buy-in, but the word of mouth and that one-on-one connection, I just want to stress that that's really important for your neighborhood in this mobilization phase.
Yeah, I do think it's a priority for us to start looking at some options, because now that I've kind of got some options to look at, I can start maybe asking some questions, and maybe we can all compare notes to see what we find out. Because some of us have similar problems as individual homeowners that the city isn't going to be able to help us with. But yeah, if we can maybe pool our resources and, find a contractor that can help several of us at a time, that'll save us some money. Because definitely, I think if some of them are like I am, my backyard is the low part of the lot. It's lower than, it's the low point on the block, and it is lower than the curb. So even moving my water out to the curb isn't going to do any good. It's going to have to be a lot of water to get over the curb. So, okay. Well, thank you so much for going to the trouble of, I mean, yesterday we were handing out flyers and I forget how big Whispering Timbers is until I get out there and start handing stuff out and go, holy cow, look how many houses are on the street here. So I know you were out there longer than I was and got over in Cambridge Park. And so anyway, we'll be able to share this recording and give people a chance to look out at it. And definitely, if you want to give like a last minute plug about the Illinois River Watershed Partnership, how people can get involved. You are a nonprofit, so you do accept donations. And so you provide educational materials for students and probably things through this venue for students, right?
Yes, usually we do field tours and youth education. It's that part of is a little on hold with COVID, but we are striving to educate, all people from the youth to the getting to the landowners. So, and yes, we do take donations. It's coming up giving season. One thing I would like to plug is that we are on Amazon Smile. Everybody's going to be buying Christmas gifts and doing that Black Friday, Cyber Monday shopping. All you need to do is pick us on smile.amazon.com. You don't have to do anything else, and Amazon gives us money. So if you can't do anything else, do that for us this season. If you have any questions or if there's any information that you want posted on our website, or if you just want to talk to me directly, my email address is morgan@irwp.org. You can reach out to me. And thank you for our people on Facebook that are listening to this event and have listened to this event. Please follow us and NWA Stormwater Education on Facebook. We have great info for you guys, and we want to connect with our landowners. So, and thank you, Donald, for staying on the call with us to the end as well.
I noticed in the chat there were lots of questions about leaves, so making sure that everyone knows when the city leaf pickup is and that they can drop those off as well. And we're sharing a lot of information on the Northwest Arkansas Stormwater Education page, and I know Morgan's helping share that out as well as how to deal with your leaves and some of the issues that they cause, because they do not need to go into the street and into the storm drain because they take so much longer to break down than what people realize. So please keep those out of our storm drain system.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Everyone have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thanks, Trish, as always.
No problem.